Okay, so get this, Jimmy Carter. He leaves the White House with like some of the lowest approval ratings ever. But now, like today, people are calling him, get this, America's greatest ex-president.
It really is kind of striking.
It's crazy, right? So today we're diving deep into Jimmy Carter. You know, the peanut farmer from Plains, Georgia, his time as president, what he did after. It's a wild ride, and we've got all these articles here. You are not going to believe some of this stuff.
Yeah, comparing his presidency to what came after, it is a pretty remarkable story.
And that's what we're starting with, that contrast.
Yeah.
But first, let's go back to the beginning. Like this guy, he wasn't born into some political family or anything. Small town, Plains, Georgia. First president born in a hospital.
Right. Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I know, right? Can you imagine? So then he's in the Navy, and not just any sailor, he's a submariner.
Yeah.
And get this, he was handpicked by Admiral Hyman Rickover himself.
Yeah.
You know, the father of the nuclear submarine program.
Oh, yeah, Rickover. He had incredibly high standards. Carter must have really impressed him.
Right. But then, family stuff. His father passes away, and Carter leaves the Navy. Takes over the family peanut farm.
Wow.
Can you picture this? Nuclear submarine officer turned peanut farmer.
That's quite a change.
Total 180. But that's where his political journey starts. Local, then state senator, then governor of Georgia.
Shows his resilience, I guess, taking on these totally different challenges.
Yeah, totally. So then 1976 happens. Watergate's still fresh in everyone's minds. And this peanut farmer comes along promising honesty and reform. And boom, he's president. It's like the whole country was desperate for something real, something genuine.
Yeah, I think people were definitely ready for a change. And Carter, this outsider, he seemed to offer that.
Okay, so the presidency. It's a mixed bag. On the one hand, you got the Camp David Accords. He brings Israel and Egypt together, sworn enemies, and they make a peace treaty. Still in effect today. I mean, that's huge. And we can't forget all his work on human rights around the world.
Yeah, the Camp David Accords, that was a major turning point, you know, to get those two countries talking, to actually agree on something. That was a real diplomatic victory.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side. Economic recession hits, the energy crisis, and then the big one, the Iran hostage crisis.
Oh, yeah.
444 days, Americans held hostage. It was all over the news, and it cast a shadow over his whole presidency.
Yeah, that was a tough time for the country. And Carter, he was under a lot of pressure.
For sure. And then remember that malaise speech? He didn't actually say malaise, but he talked about a crisis of confidence in America.
Right.
It didn't go over well. People thought he was blaming them for the country's problems.
Yeah.
His approval ratings just tanked.
That speech, I mean, it really defined his presidency in a way.
Yeah. So 1981 comes around. He leaves office with an approval rating around 30%.
Oof.
Not exactly how you want to be remembered, right? But here's where things get really interesting. What Jimmy Carter did after leaving the White House, that's what has everybody talking.
You know, most people would have just, I don't know, retired quietly. But not Jimmy Carter.
Nope, not a chance. He and Rosalind, they go and start this thing, the Carter Center. But it's not just some, like, think tank churning out reports, you know? They're all about peace, democracy, human rights, but they're actually out there doing it.
Interesting.
Seriously. We're talking about monitoring elections in countries just starting out as democracies, wading into conflicts to try and, you know, cool things down, working to eradicate diseases like guinea worm in Africa. It's like hands-on, roll-up-your-sleeves work, but on a global scale.
The Carter Center, they've definitely been involved in a lot of stuff around the world.
Oh, yeah, big time. And the articles go into detail about it all, negotiating peace agreements, securing the release of hostages, speaking up for people whose rights are being violated. He even went to North Korea. Can you believe that? At President Clinton's request to talk to Kim Il-sung.
Wow, so he wasn't afraid to get involved in some pretty tricky situations.
No kidding. And all this work, all this effort, it just keeps building and building.
Right.
And then in 2002, bam, the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow.
And it wasn't just for the Carter Center stuff. It was for his entire life of service, the Navy, the presidency, even laying the groundwork for the eventual end of the Cold War. It was like the whole world was saying, hey, Jimmy Carter, we see you. We see what you've been doing.
Yeah, it was like a recognition of all his work for peace and diplomacy over the years.
So now we have this puzzle, right? The president who leaves office with terrible approval ratings, and this ex-president who becomes a global icon. How do we square those two things? It's almost like redemption or something.
I think it shows that leadership can take many forms, you know?
Yeah.
It's not always about being popular or even holding a specific office. It can be about the long game. about sticking to your values no matter what.
Yeah, it's like he found his true calling after leaving the pressure cooker of the presidency behind. No more political battles, no more trying to please everyone. He could just focus on what he believed in.
Yeah, maybe being free from the constraints of office gave him more freedom to act, more flexibility.
Right. And it makes you think about second acts, like your life isn't defined by just one chapter. You can change, you can find a new purpose, and you can keep making a difference, no matter how old you are or what's happened before.
That's a pretty inspiring story.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this guy, he lived to be 100, a whole century.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It really makes you think. What strikes you most about his legacy?
I think it's his unwavering faith and his belief in the inherent goodness of people. Those values, they were at the core of everything he did, from working for peace internationally to building homes with Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing seeing someone use their influence not to benefit themselves, but to help others.
Yeah.
To leave the world better than they found it. A legacy built on compassion and service, not power or wealth.
It's a powerful reminder that those qualities can have a huge impact on the world.
It really makes you think, what are we doing with our time? Are we making that kind of difference?
It's a good question. I think Carter's life really highlights how important it is to find your purpose and then, actually act on it.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive on Jimmy Carter, let's leave our listeners with something to think about. If we look at his whole journey, his whole life, what can we learn from it? What can we take away and maybe apply to our own lives, our communities, to try to make the world, a little bit better?
That's interesting. Maybe it starts with figuring out what our talents are, what we're passionate about, and then finding ways to use those things for good. Or maybe it's about, being more open-minded, more cooperative when we face problems.
Maybe it's as simple as remembering that every single one of us can make a difference. I mean, look at Jimmy Carter. From peanut farmer to peacemaker. He shows us that it's never too late to make your mark on the world.
Yeah, his story is really a testament to, humility, service, and never giving up on making a positive impact.
And that's it for our deep dive into the life and legacy of Jimmy Carter. The man who showed us that true leadership, well, it can bloom even after leaving the highest office.
Yeah.
So what stuck with you the most about his story? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.